What do you strongly suspect but have no proof of? Cornhole is a conspiracy by the insurance industry because they feel horseshoes is too dangerous. That my abusive stepfather went to jail, not exile, for 8 years when I was a teen, and that for a few years prior we were actually running from the law, not hiding from the government because of his activism. This suddenly dawned on me about a month ago, more than a decade later. Kinda like how it suddenly clicks that the dog didn't go to a farm. Edit. Holy it, this blew up. For those asking for the story, here's what I vaguely remember. I just did the math and this was almost 20 years ago. I'm Kenyan, and at that time, we were under the dictatorship of Moi, another asshole. And back then you couldn't say anything that painted the government wrongly. I was too young, maybe 13, to fully understand, but what we were led to believe by my mother is he did something bad to the government. At that time it was common for political activists to go into exile, so we didn't question it. For about 2 years prior, I ran them, making us move cities and stay indoors. The two kept disappearing without warning for weeks at a time, leaving me behind to babysit my 3 siblings. My mother ain't a saint either, but that's a story for another day. Towards the end, we lived in a 4-bedroom bungalow and were instructed to stay in the bedrooms in the back at all times, never switching on the lights in the living areas that face the main street. We skipped a school year because of this. Then one day she came back alone and he never came back. Later she mentioned he might be in Turkey. I think I made the connection that he had fled there and left it at that. TBH, I was too happy that he was no longer at home and I was finally free. His presence had been a constant darkness in our lives. Years later, my mother mentioned he's back and asked if we wanted him back. We all said no. He moved back to his hometown. I've never seen him again. Back then they only kept manual records. If I wanted to find proof, I could check for his records at the high courts, but honestly he was and still is good riddance, so why bother? Man. As I write this, memories keep flooding in and I keep getting amazed that it took me this long to make the connection. Some it was so obvious. That my English teacher didn't read essays and based grades on how we were in class. That only about 20% of people actually do any work. The rest just get by looking busy. Historians plus 200 years from now will be able to look at all of the private messages and data of people who have been long dead, similar to how we can read private letters of people from 1700s. Some zoos have empty exhibits and just claim the animal isn't there. You just never see them. Dentists ask you questions with all that stuff in your mouth because they think it's funny to watch you struggle. That the ginger ale at this diner I go to every day is just Coke and Sprite mixed together. That my grandmother had a child before she married my grandfather. When my grandparents met and started dating, my grandma was only 13. My grandpa was 20. They married when she was 17 and he was 24. Right after he came back from serving in World War II. That was about as much of the story as anyone in my family ever knew. They'd been dating. Then he went overseas, and she wrote to him while he was gone. When he got back, they got married. A few years after my grandma died, my grandfather suddenly mentioned that they'd actually been broken up for a while before she started writing to him. After they'd dated about a year, he went to pick her up at her house one day, only to find she wasn't home. Her parents informed him that she'd left to live with some cousins a few hours away, and she'd be gone for about a year. He got upset that she hadn't told him about this in advance and ended the relationship. In another year-ish had passed and she returned home to her parents. She started writing him overseas and apologized, and they started dating again. My grandpa told this story very blandly and seemed to believe that the situation was what it said on the tin. But of course in the 1940s 60s it was quite common for teenage girls to go live with relatives for a year as a code for having an out of wedlock pregnancy. My grandpa would never have admitted if they'd been having sex, but I'm betting they were. She got pregnant, and she was sent off somewhere to have the baby. I've done commercial DNA testing, so I'm on the lookout for someone to turn up as a sibling match to my mom someday. The only other explanation for my grandma suddenly leaving town would be if her parents didn't approve her relationship with my grandpa. But from everything I know of them, they were perfectly fine with their 13-year-old daughter dating a guy in his 20s. There's one company in a town local to me who board up windows. Nobody else in the area seems to do it. Every single window, door, abandoned shop, all done by this one company. They've got a ridiculous sized HQ and have put a decent amount of money towards fixing up other buildings in the area. So I've got a theory they're the ones doing the damage or paying people to do it, then obviously getting the job of fixing it up as they're really well known in the area. Despite having no proof of this, I am 100% confident I am onto them. That I have some crazy rare unknown disease, and anytime I go to the doctor they say everything's fine even though I haven't felt the same for 6 months. That Bath and Body Works has like 13 unique scents. Every couple of months they just rotate the scents in and call them something else. Edit. Thank you for the gold, stranger. That my ex-wife's boyfriend hurts my boys. They used to tell me it happened but I never had proof. I then saw Mark one day and they said it was cause of the boyfriend and she explained it away. All of these times I'd call CPS and nothing came of it. One time my boy told CPS that when he talks bad about the boyfriend, mom hits him. But still nothing happened. After that point they stopped telling me things. Which in my opinion means that they are just afraid of being hit by mom for telling me things about the boyfriend. Reddit questions are a clever way I could compile data on every one of us. It's taking questions like, what would you buy if you could only buy things with the first letter of your name? Children of the 80s what? Question mark. What is it in your state country that it's capable of building a profile on all of us? Toddler pageants are just dog whistles for pedophile rings to operate in the background. Someone has programmed thousands of bots to only upvote the Reddit posts questions they choose, thus manipulating the Reddit mob's direction and narrative. To what end? I don't know. The Kardashians usually wear solid colored clothing because it's easier for them to Photoshop. That my 5-month-old knows exactly when I'm about to fall asleep and starts crying just to duck with me. Our ancient human history is far more vast and impressive than we can even begin to imagine. Edit. Thanks for the gold. I believe that Apple never actually intended for anyone to buy their $999 monitor stand. It was just an excuse so they could invalidate all warranty claims for the Pro monitor. We can't approve your claim due to the use of improper third-party equipment. That a lot of businesses in my hometown are just money laundering operations. 25 nail salons in a town of 70,000, 3,000 square foot DVD rental shop in the best block of downtown where commercial rents are very high, dozens of $10 barber shops sitting empty all day but remaining open, red flags all around. Queen Elizabeth will probably live up to 120 years and longer. She is one of the best fed and most cared person on earth. If we invented something for immortality, she likely took it already. That my father was in a super secret sector of the military during his service in the Vietnam War. Unfortunately, he died 2 years ago so I'll probably never know what he really did. Suspect my physically and mentally abusive ex-husband was planning on offing me during our separation divorce. He got a $75,000 life insurance policy on me during our separation. Found out 2 years after our divorce when he had overpaid the policy and the insurance sent me a refund check. Mistake on their part. During our separation, he had invited me to join his family vacation at Grand Canyon. I said no. He invited me to the mountains that same summer to try to be a family again. I said no. Then he invited me to Mexico for reconciliation. Again no. I said no because the gut feelings I had and my mom told me not to. She had 3 dreams in a row that my soon-to-be ex-husband would tell her I was dead. I have no proof, just the insurance policy and my mom's dreams. 2 years after divorce, he cancelled policy. I didn't know you could get insurance on someone without them knowing. That the universe is teeming with life. Earth just can't be that special. Edit. Glad this is a rich topic. I'm very familiar with the Drake equation and the Fermi paradox. My favorite answer to the Fermi paradox is that we're just not that interesting. Life on Earth is an anthill in a grassy area in the corner of an enormous city. Super curious to hear thoughts from those who doubt there is life elsewhere. Would love to hear your reasoning. I think my great-great uncle was gay. but lived in a time where he had to hide that part of himself. He never had a wife or kids. He traveled a lot and was very into art. I asked my grandma a while back if she thought he was gay and she said he just wasn't interested in having girlfriends. Jeffrey Epstein was murdered, coerced into suicide. That Apple invented the AirPod meme. That my wife is throwing one of each pair of socks away. I strongly suspect that most people that know me do not like me. Edit. Thanks for the likes and all the help. Prince Charles will never sit on the throne. I believe he made a deal with Queen Elizabeth that in exchange for being allowed to marry Camilla he gave up his right to sit on the throne. Prince William will sit on the throne when Queen Elizabeth dies. Taco Bell's rand apartment is just a bunch of people sitting in a room getting stoned while someone stands on the other side of a two-way mirror taking notes. Takes bong hit dude. You know what I could really go for right now? Tacos. No man. I'm craving some Doritos. Takes another hit dude. Put your hands together. Dorito tacos. Analyst scribbles furiously on their clipboard. Eater. Silver. Or you guys. Woman's clothes have either no pockets or crumby pockets to promote handbag sales. Everyone except for me is a hired actor and I'm in a TV show. My phone isn't really at 100% when it tells me it is. The Statue of Liberty switches hands when nobody is looking. Mattress stores are a money laundering scheme. No one buys that many mattresses. That my brother stole and sold all my DS/3DS games for weed money. They were in a black case and one day they were gone. Case and all. I still haven't beaten Pokemon Conquest. Edit. I am shocked at the amount of people that have also had this happen to them. It breaks my heart a sibling, parent, uncle would steal from a family member like that. And I hope you all have all the games, cards, records that you could ever want now with no one to steal them less than 3. Despite his song, Sir Mix-a-Lot actually prefers women who are independent, educated, and can carry on a conversation. Bigfoot is actually a cultural memory from humans who migrated from Asia, and that's why there are stories about Yeti and Sasquatch. The actual creature though died out tens of thousands of years ago. 35-40 foot sharks exist. They have the whole ocean to hide in, which we are rubbish at exploring, and they have learned to avoid contact with humans. They come close to land occasionally to hunt when food is scarce, then go back to the deep ocean. There is some evidence out there to support this theory, but it's all sketchy AF. I believe my grandmother was a serial killer. She was married 7 times, each ending in a sudden death. She died in the 1980s, but everything is still suspicious and no one seems to know anything. I did find an article about her when she came to the US where her first husband died defending her after her ex-boyfriend climbed in her window in New York City. I also found evidence of her having been in prison before coming to the US. My dog may not have gone to live on a farm, but my parents have never given a clear explanation of this. That humanity still has the same base desires it has throughout all of time, but society is built to keep us from being the barbarians we once were, and it is a very tenuous relationship. That there is something seriously wrong with me and people aren't telling me about it. I feel I have some sort of serious mental disability, personality disorder, or even some slight retardation, and no one will acknowledge it or admit it to me. Those who have power subtly control the population openly. The population doesn't realize they're being controlled. Anti-vaxxers and Flat Earth was a trolling effort and popularized by 4chan to see how many gullible people would eat it up. Edit. Okay, I put in the word popularized. Saying okay Google is Pavlov teaching humans to comply to AI and machines. That your phone and laptop mics are hot and sending data to certain groups. Most of the posts in our show are thoughts were not thought in the shower. I think my local newspaper and news stations make up fake Facebook profiles to post inflammatory statements in the comment sections of their news releases. There are frequent commenters whose profiles have a basic name, no friends, random intonation friends, basic profile information, and only one profile picture who will make some outlandish comment that starts a war. That the purpose of life in the universe is purely to create a new universe. To me, this is the only way for any life to ensure its survival forever. And I'm not talking about just human life. I think the chances of us surviving are super slim. Consider this. We can safely assume that every problem life will ever encounter will have a solution. Given a species has enough resources to exploit any resources it wants, luck is on their side, and they don't hit any Femi walls, then the only limiting factor to life solving a problem is time. In the universe, time is not infinite. There will be a time where the very atoms in the universe start to decay. This is life's final deadline. If life in its varying forms cannot find a way to escape the universe before this happens, life in the universe will die forever. And how does one escape a universe while being inside a dying universe? You must perform the genesis of a new one. Perhaps several new ones. This is the ultimate problem to solve because the universe makes it so. So if the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, life is the powerhouse of the universe. That the majority of Reddit is bots. It's remarkable how many posts' top comments are just old posts' top comments. That some Canadian guy who owns an antique shop that I bought a camera from in April recognized me. He acted flustered when I came in and I came back the next day to make my purchase. He sold me the camera for what I thought was a reasonable price and threw in an owner's manual in near perfect condition. A quick Google search reveals that it's an extremely rare camera that was only produced for 2 years. 1000 still in existence or operational, and 1 out of every 1000 working ones still has a certain part. Mine does. This guy's whole shop was based around antique cameras, and my dad talked shop with him for a while, and he even explained to me how to find film or modify some for my camera. He knew what he was selling me and lost a lot of money on the transaction. I even got it appraised to confirm my suspicions about what it was. I work for a call center for the marketplace in the US. There was no interview, barely any training, super high turnover and super low morale. None of their decisions make sense. The entire operation almost feels like it's trying to work as poorly as possible, so everyone hates it. Famous actors have secret accounts so they can see if their movie or name is mentioned in AskReddit replies. More than half of people who buy expensive luxury cars, BMWs, Audi, etc., can't actually afford them. They're just trying to hold an image that they are rich. That a relative is a CIA agent. She was in the Peace Corps, Vietnam era. Ever since she's been a world traveler, somehow able to drop her work and go hiking the Spanish version of the Appalachian Trail or otherwise go to exotic locales. Sometimes she came back with injuries. I fell as we were climbing some rocks. Her son is in the agency as an employee, not a spy, and he's married to a CIA translator. Like 90% of the job listings on Monster.com are fakes designed to collect analytics from users, so Monster can sell your data to advertisers. In my city something bad is about to happen. I see a lot of mansions on sale, and houses with good location too. I think rich people know something that the rest of the people don't. Pretty paranoid. Sorry, edit 1. The economic conjectures are accurate, but in this city we have a petrochemistry, and like a month ago, an explosion was listened on all the city. Every episode of every reality show is either tightly scripted, or at least framed and reshot so the producers can get the right amount of drama on the screen. Edit. 70% of the replies are of course this is true. You'd be retarded to think otherwise, and the other 30% are this is an absurd fabrication and you'd have to be retarded to believe it. God bless Reddit. Mathematician here. Here are 3 examples of some things that mathematicians strongly suspect are true but we can't prove. Goldbach's conjecture. This is the conjecture that if n is an even number greater than 4 then it can be expressed as a sum of 2 odd primes. For example, 10 equals 7 plus 3, and 108 equals 101 plus 7. These are examples where Goldbach's conjecture holds. Since we've written 10 as a sum of 2 primes, 7 and 3, and written 108 as a sum of 2 primes, 7 and 101, we've been able to prove some things very close to this. For example, we can show that every odd number greater than 5 is the sum of at most 3 primes, something which is implied by Goldbach's conjecture. and we know that sufficiently large even numbers are expressible as a sum of a prime and a two numbers which have no more than two prime factors. So for example, one is allowed to do things like write 32 equals 21 plus 11 since 21 equals 3, 7. But one couldn't use 116 equals 105 plus 11 since 105 equals 3, 5, 7. And so 105 has 3 prime factors. Second, are there infinitely many even, perfect numbers? A number is said to be perfect if when you add up all its divisors less than the number you get the number itself. An example is 6. 1, 2 and 3 divide 6. And 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6, so 6 is perfect. Another example is 28. Since 1, 2, 4, 7 and 14 are the proper divisors of 28, 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 7 plus 14 equals 28. A non-example is 10. 10 is not perfect since 1 plus 2 plus 5 equals 8, which is not 10. Whether there are infinitely many even perfect numbers has been a question of interest for centuries if not millennia. The history gets hazy when we go back too far. We strongly suspect that there are infinitely many, and we can even give a good approximation for about how many there should be under a given x. But we can't prove it. The third problem is whether there are any odd perfect numbers. That is there any number which is odd and perfect? We strongly suspect that there aren't any. This too is a very old problem. Although we don't know exactly how old, we do know a lot of things. For example, an odd perfect number needs to be very big. At least 10 circumflex 1500. In comparison, there are about at most 10 circumflex 80 particles in the observable universe. And it must have at least 10 distinct prime factors. And it must have a lot of repeated prime factors. This problem is actually one near and dear to my heart. And some of my own research has been on this problem. Cats can understand our words, but do not care. They are waiting for a moment to speak, but since we are so far beneath them it hasn't happened yet. I suspect that my cat understands much of what I say to him. He listens attentively with his ears cocked in my direction, making intense eye contact with his deep green, intelligent looking eyes. The way he responds, with a specific litany of MROWs, confirms my theory that he gets the gist of what I'm saying. Construction companies make the roads impossible to navigate on purpose. Pretty much every major road in my town is under construction, and they always leave the road worse than it was originally. It has to be intentional. Matt Groening and The Simpsons writers are from the future, stuck here giving us hints about the future. The majority of people would happily support genocide if it was a genocide of all the people in the world that they dislike. That is, people with opposing political views. Also, I strongly suspect that referees in the NFL and some other leagues have been told or hinted to ref unfairly in favor of certain marquee teams or players. There is only one Olsen twin. It's actually just one girl, moving back and forth, really quickly. Only about 10% of lottery winners actually win those huge Powerballs. Of course someone real has to win sometimes. Can't have no winners or people would get suspicious. But honestly, who would know if there was no real winner? Since the chances are so small, nobody gets suspicious if their ticket doesn't win. Basically free money for the state to use. Not to mention the states that allow you to remain anonymous. Oil company lobbyists are behind the whole paper straws thing. The waste from straws is so inconsequential, but yet almost overnight, half the restaurants in the world switched to these horrible paper straws that leave a weird residue in your mouth and disintegrate before you're done with your drink. I feel like this was someone's sinister idea to make the general public resent environmentalists. And it's working, because those damn paper straws always seem to strike up a conversation about how global warming didn't wind up being as big of a deal as Al Gore said it would be. Maddie McCann was killed by her parents. Wait, what do you mean there is proof of that? Oh wait, no one seems to do jacket with what they found at the crime scene. That everyone on here is a bot except for me. That someone I once called a best friend is a rapist. Never caught him, but a few women have told me what he did and how he did it. All the same method every time, with the only connection to each incident being the guy. I cut ties with this piece of scum shortly after one girl told me what he did whilst she was under the age of consent. The age difference was not large, so there may be a grey area, but it still feels wrong. I want to start a case against this guy but do not know how. My dog sees supernatural events at our house.